Hello everyone and welcome. In this video we are going to create a health bar and a damage system. So let's get started. Here I have the Epic Games launcher open and I'm going to launch Unreal Engine 5. And when this tab opens up, I'm going to click on Games and let us just create a third-person template so we have a character to start with. You can also create a first-person template or a top-down template. That is up to you, that doesn't matter. But let me just go ahead and create a third-person template. It's going to be for the target platform desktop, and the quality preset is maximum, and I'm going to include the starter content. I'll go ahead and give your project a name. I'm going to call mine YouTube Health Bar, and let's go ahead and click on Create Project. When the project opens up, I'm just going to click on Update down here. And for this content drawer, I like having it up all the time instead of just clicking down here all the time. So clicking on this content drawer, I am going to click on Dock in Layout so we can see it all the time. Before we start, in the video description, I've included these 4 images for you, and we can use those to create a custom UI. Now you don't have to get this, but if you want to, you can go ahead and make it look prettier than the default one. So over here in the folders, let's right click and let's make a new folder. Let's call it UI. And inside of here, let us import our images. So just click and drag and import them here to the content browser. And now you can see they are now imported. The next thing is let's create our UI. So let's right click. And here in Unreal Engine, you can create a lot of things. And the thing we are interested in is creating a user interface. So creating a user interface, selecting this called a Widget Blueprint. And just go ahead and click on user widget here. And let's give it a name. I'm going to call it WB main. And WB, I usually call it as a prefix for Widget Blueprint. And this will be the main UI for the game. So let's double click here. And when the Widget Blueprint opens up, this is what it looks like. So here to the left, you can see we can add different elements, for example, buttons or images or checkboxes. And down here, you can see all the elements that are added already. So right now it's empty because we don't have anything. And here in the middle, you can see the UI that you build. This is the designer, and you can hold your right mouse button to navigate around here. And then here at the top, we have this. This is the designer, and in the graph, we can add functionality later on. So let's go ahead and design the health bar. First off, before you start designing anything, you have to search for a canvas panel. So dragging this canvas panel and adding it to the main UI. Let's now click on this canvas panel, and you can see this is the main window that we have. So what we want to do is we want to start with something called an overlay. And an overlay makes it possible for you to overlay items on top of each other. For example, a background and a health bar on top of it. So this is the overlay that you have added, and you can see you can drag it around inside of your canvas. So inside of this overlay, let's just let it be here and design it, and we can always move it at the end. So this is the overlay, and you can make it larger if you want to. Let's add first a background image. So dragging this image up here, searching for image, dragging it into the overlay, and clicking on the image, let us fill the whole area. And now when you click on the image, you can see you have a lot of different settings you can edit for this image. So let us fill it horizontally and fill it vertically inside of this overlay. And we already imported the custom images. Now you can just work with this if you haven't imported anything, but I'm going to work with these ones just to make it look a little bit better. So clicking on the brush up here, you can select what image you want to use, and clicking here, let us just use this one called Black Square Flat. So this is the one we're using now. If you want to see your UI without all of these dashed lines, you can always click up here to remove the dashed lines, and you can see what it looks like. I'm going to click on this image and going to click on Control D to duplicate, or you can right click and click duplicate. That's up to you. And let us now change this into a blue one. And instead of filling vertically, I'm going to fill or top align it up here. And then making the size of the Y to 5. Just for a small design to make it look a bit better. And I'm going to do that for the bottom as well. So clicking on this upper image, clicking on Control D to duplicate, and now aligning it here to the button. So now you can see this is what it actually looks like, and this looks a bit better than before. Now let us add our health bar. And to do that, again, let me add an overlay because in my health bar, it's a progress bar, and we have some text on top of it displaying how much health you have. So dragging this overlay into my overlay that I already have, and you can see it is here. It's very tiny because we don't have anything inside of here. So let's add a progress bar. This is what it's called. And the progress bar is now added. And on top of it, we want some text. So searching for some text and dragging it into this overlay. Before we continue, if you're interested in similar content, make sure to take a look at the video description below to check out my released Unreal Engine 5 courses. I've given you over 85% of the courses teaching you how to create 2D and 3D games in Unreal Engine 5, so make sure to check out the links below and let's continue. Now let us design it. So for this overlay, I want it to be in the middle. So aligning it here in the middle, and actually for this overlay, let's align it here, fill it horizontally instead. And let's do that for the progress bar as well. Clicking on the progress bar, let's fill it here horizontally, and vertically, we can just let it be here in the center. We don't have to fill it like this. So letting it be here in the center. And for this text, I'm just going to say, for example, 100. This we will be changing dynamically in the game. So this one, the text, I will actually center in the middle. Now, clicking on the progress bar, we have to make it look a bit better. So in the style, you can click here in the background image. Let's change the background image to this one, image black square dark. So it is a bit darker than the background. And now let us go to the fill image and change it to the red one, and go to this marquee image and change it to the red one. Now you can see it's a lot larger than before. And if you fill this percentage, so if you just up the number here, you can see it's filling the progress bar, but the color is not red like we set it here. It's looking a bit wrong. And this is because this fill color, for some reason, I don't know why, it's blue. So let's click on it. And you can change it to white. And this will actually fully remove this blue color. And you can see this is the true color for the button you added. Now let me zoom out a little bit. So I like to work at this zoom +2. This is what it usually looks like in the game. And for this progress bar, I just want to make it a little bit smaller. So here in the marquee image, in the Y, I'm just going to write 40 in the Y size. And I'm going to copy this and paste it up here and paste it up here as well. Now for the text up here, I'm going to make it smaller as well. Maybe instead of 24, let's make it 14. And what I'm going to do here, I'm also going to go down to the outline. Actually, not the outline. Let me go down to the shadow. And here in the shadow color, the alpha, if you make that higher, you actually can see some shadow. So I'm going to put it to 0.35, which means 35%. If you put it to 1, the shadow is fully there. But if you put it to 0.35, it's like 35% shadow. And you can also make the shadow appear more if you set this shadow offset to something larger. So I'm going to set it to 2 by 2. And it's going to be a little bit away from the text. So this is what it looks like right now. And I want to give some spacing here to the sides. You can see the health bar is clamping to the sides. So I'm going to click on this, this overlay, actually, not the progress bar, the overlay. And here in the padding, this is where you can push it away. So pushing it away from the right side, I'm going to push it away by 30 pixels or 40 pixels. I think 40 looks a lot better. And here I'm going to push it away from the left side by 40 pixels as well. So this is what it looks like. And we can always click on this overlay and resize it so it looks a bit better. We don't have to have that much of space. We only have this health bar. And now what you can do, actually, let me resize this. So instead of 40 in the padding, let me do 30 by 30. I think there's too much space. And now you can resize it to whatever you want. So try to do whatever you want here. Now let's put it down here. I want my health bar to be down here on the UI. So first you have to change the anchor point to this side here. And what you can do now is you can click and drag your UI and just put it down here. Or if you want exact numbers, you can always go here in the position and change the X and Y. And if you want to see the dashed lines and see where your screen border is, you can click on these dashed lines. Just remember your UI has to be inside of this box here. It can't be outside here. So just try to resize it to whatever you want, and I think this is perfect. So I'm going to click on compile to make sure everything is good, and it's going to give you a check mark if you have no errors, and you are going to click on save here. Now let us add some functionality for this health bar. And before we do that, let me click on this progress bar and change the name of it. I'm going to call it prog health bar, so progress bar health bar. And for this text, I'm going to click on it and call it txt health. And also remember to click on is variable for this text, and you will see why in a little bit. And for these three images, you can select all three of them, and you can remove this is variable. And let's compile and save. And you can see here in the graph, what the variable means is you can see those as variables. So you can actually edit them here in code. The reason why I removed these images, you can see if is variable is ticked, you can see them here in the graph. But I don't really need to change anything for this background, so I'm just going to remove it so my project looks cleaner. I only need to modify the text and the progress bar to tell me how much health I have left. So the only thing that needs to be variable is the progress bar and this text, because we need to change it during gameplay. So going back to the graph, let's delete these default events. So selecting all of them and clicking delete on my keyboard. Now inside of here, I can right click and I need to make a custom event. So writing custom event and selecting the custom event. And remember here, you can add things by right clicking and you can search for all the functions in the game. So here, let's make a custom event because code in Blueprint cannot run without an event. So we need an event first. And this one, let's call it set health bar info. And this event is responsible for setting the health bar info. So what we want to do is let's take this progress bar. And what we are trying to do is we're trying to update this percentage. So if you click on the progress bar, we're trying to update this percentage here. So let's put it to 1 by default. So you have full health. And let's go back here and you can just drag from this progress bar and say set percentage. So this set percent and connect it. And the other thing we're trying to do is take this text and then dragging it and say set text. So we want to set text to the amount of health that you have left. And this will ultimately change whatever you have written here in this text here. It will change it dynamically into the game, so it tells you how much health you have left. Now let's leave it at this. We can always come in here and set these variables, but for now we don't really have anything to do anymore. We have to code the damage system before we can actually insert some values inside of here. So let's now close this widget and let's apply it here to the screen. So you can see when I click on play on my level, right now, if you want, you can see it in full screen by clicking on F11. And now you can see my game. I don't really have my UI. I can't see it. And the reason is you have to add it to your viewport before you can see it. So let's go here to the third person. And in the blueprints folder, inside of here, let's right click, go to blueprint class, and let's add something called a player controller. And in the player controller, this is usually where we create the UI. So let me just stay consistent with this blueprint project and call it BP, and they have called it third person game mode, for example. I'm going to call it third person controller. And inside of here, let's double click this controller, go directly to the event graph. And here, let me delete this event tick, and I only need this one called begin play. And this event is just saying, what should I do whenever I begin playing the game? And the only thing I want to do is drag from this execution pin and let go. And now you can search for something. And the thing we want to do is called create widget. We want to create our widget blueprint that we actually just created. And now create widget, now you have to select which one. And it is this one we just created. And let's right click, promote this to a variable. So we have stored it inside of here. And a variable is just a container storing this widget blueprint information. And I'm going to call it WB main. So just give it a name. And now to display it to the viewport, you have to drag from this and say add to viewport. Now, when you see here, when I begin playing the game, I'm going to create this widget blueprint and displaying it to the viewport. So clicking on play, you can see here nothing is really happening, and this is because we have to use our controller as the default one for this level. So going to the world settings, and again, if you don't have the world settings, you can go to the window and click here to show the world settings. So inside of here, clicking on selected game mode, let's now change the player controller class to the one we just made called BP third person controller. Now let's save. And when you click on play now, you can see when I click on F11 to show you better, you can see now we can see the health bar. So now the UI is actually added, and whatever you add to that widget blueprint will be displayed on your screen. All right, so before we continue, let's now make the damage system so we actually have some values we can work from. So let's go to the player. You already have a player inside of here, so this is the player we are controlling right now. The blueprint made for this actor is called BP third person character here in the blueprints folder. So double click on it. And you see here we have some very basic code already. I'm going to delete this one camera input gamepad. I don't really have a gamepad for this project, so I'm going to delete it. And this is simply the only code we have right now. So very simple thing. We have the mouse movement, the movement with the keyboard, and the jump movement. So now let's create our own damage system here. And the event we want to use, you can see every time you add some functionality, you have to have an event which is marked with this red color. So you can't run blueprint code without events. So we have something called any damage, and this is the event that plays whenever the player receives damage. So we need two variables here, and again, variables are just containers that contain information. And I'm going to click on this plus button 2 times, so it creates these two variables. And the first one, the type is going to be a float, which is just a number with decimal places, so you can compile and save the project, and you can see what the default value is for this variable. So it's just a number with decimal places. And let's call this one current health. Now let's take the other one, also change it to a float, which is a number with decimal places, and let's change the name of it to max health. So we have two different variables. Now when I receive damage from something, I want to subtract my current health from this damage. So let's say, for example, I have 100 health is my current health, minus, so you can drag from this execution or this pin here, and you can write the minus or just write subtract if you want to, and you can select it here. And now let's connect the damage to it. So current health minus the damage. For example, if we have 100 health minus 10, if that was the damage, we will get 90. So we have to set the value again. And the way to do it is you can drag this current health and click on set current health, and now drag from this execution pin to here. So now we are setting the new health value, which might be 90 if the damage was, for example, 10 and the current health was 100. And now there is a chance where you get so much damage that this number, like when you subtract it, it will be in the minus. So for example, if I have 100 health, and if the damage is 110, it's going to be minus 10. And I don't really want to do that. I want to stop my health at 0. And this is why we use a clamp node. So let's drag from here and write clamp. And let's use this one because right now we're using a float variable. So let's choose this one called clamp float. And here we have already plugged in the value. So what's the minimum? It is 0, meaning I don't want to go below 0. And the maximum is this max health. So the maximum is max health. And now we can drag from this. So instead of going here to here, we can now drag from the clamp and plug it here to the set current health. So now, even though the damage is 110 and my health is 100, it can never go below 0 because I am clamping the value. And after that, now we want to update the UI. And again, I told you before, so here's actually giving me an error before we continue because we haven't set the max health value. So let's click on this max health. And let's just set the default value to 100 so it doesn't give us an error. And let's compile and save. Now, I told you before we handle UI inside of the player controller. So we actually have to make an event inside of here. So in here, let's right click and again do a custom event. And let's call this one update health bar. And what this is going to do, it's simply going to take this widget blueprint. Remember here in the UI, if I open up the widget blueprint again, and I go to the graph, here in the graph, we made this one called set health bar info. And now I have to call it here from the player controller. So in the update health, I'm just going to take my widget blueprint. Remember the event is inside of here. So I can drag from here and say set health bar info. So you can see the function here, set health bar info. And ultimately, I can see from here that we need input for the current health and the max health, because in the widget blueprint, we actually need the percentage. And if you want to calculate a percentage, you need to divide your current health with your maximum health. So let's actually add them to here. So instead of adding variables here, you can also add them to events. So in the input down here, clicking on the plus, let's add the first one called current health. And it's going to be a float, and add a new one called max health. And this is a float again. Now, again, to calculate the percentage, you can drag from the current health and write the divided icon, and you can click on divide here as the operator. And let's drag this away so we have more space. And we want to divide it by the maximum health. Now we have the percentage, and we can actually click and drag this percentage and plug it inside of here. So now we are calculating the percentage. Now the text that will be displayed here on top of our progress bar is just how much health we have right now. So this is just the current health. I'm going to drag here and put it here to the text, and Unreal Engine is going to tell you these are two variables. This is a float, this is a text, and I'm going to convert the float into a text. This is what it's going to tell you right here. So this is what it's doing, and you can just place it anywhere just to make it look better. You can double click here and make a reroute node just like this. So let's compile and save, and let's go back to the player controller. Now you can see these two variables that I added because I added them here to the set bar info in the widget blueprint. So now in the player controller, again, let me just click and drag and insert them. So I don't have to click here manually and create them. I can actually just drag them into here, and it will create them manually for me or automatically for me. So here in the third person character, we can actually now use this one in the player controller to parse the information to the widget blueprint. So we called it update health bar. So over here in the player, to get access to your player controller, I can right click here and say get controller. And you can see it says returns the controller for this actor. And now I have to tell it I am talking specifically about this controller. So I'm going to drag here and say cast to. And this is what cast to means. It means I need to use the information from this controller. So cast to, and I called it BP third person controller. So now from this execution pin, I can access everything inside of this blueprint. And I want to access is this one called update health bar. I'm going to drag from here and say update health bar and select this function here. Now we have to plug in the max health and current health. So I can just drag from this variable and drag it here. This is the current health. And the max health, again, drag this variable and place it in here. This is the max health. So now just to make sure that this UI actually also updates when you play the game, because right now this UI only updates whenever you receive any damage. So let me just copy this. So selecting all of this, control copy, and I'm going to create a new event up here called begin play. So just like in the player controller, when I begin playing the game, I want to update my UI to whatever maximum and current health I have. And let's actually set our maximum and current health here in the beginning as well. So I'm going to drag this current health and set this value, because right now the current health default value is 0. So I'm going to take this max health, which is 100 right now, and you can just plug it inside of here and connect it like this. So at the beginning of the game, you're setting your current health value to your maximum health value, which you have entered here. And this is going to update the UI here. So it's updated whenever you click on play on the game, because if you don't insert this, you're actually only updating the UI whenever you receive damage. So now let's actually play the game and test it out. And before we do that, let's go to this, quickly add to project and search for a pane. So search for pane, and you can see you can add this one called pane causing volume. So you can click on it here and clicking on G to view other icons. And it is actually below the ground here. So let's take it up here and place it, for example, here on the side so we know where it is. And now when I click on play, and I full screen and I go to this pane causing volume, you can see my health bar is now updating and I'm losing 1 health at a time. And this is because the health or this pane volume is subtracting 1 every time. So the pane interval and the damage per second, for example, I can put it to 5 damage per second, and I can now walk into it and it's now subtracting 5 every time. To make it a little bit more interesting, let's go back to our code. So going back to the third-person blueprint, and here in our character, let's actually play an effect whenever we get damaged. So from here, let's do spawn emitter at location. So we are going to spawn some visual effect here whenever we are getting damaged. So the emitter I want to spawn, you can click here, and let's just select this 1p explosion. We don't have more than that. And what is the location you want to spawn it in? You can drag from here and say get actor location. And this means you are going to get this player's location, because right now we are coding inside of the BP third person character. So we are going to get self, which means wherever this character is, we're going to get that actor's location, and we're going to spawn this particle effect on it. Now we have to check if the health is 0, we want to kill the player. So let's now take the current health and drag from this and write equal. And you can select this one called equal. And let's connect, actually not connected yet. So let's take it here. Let's drag from this pin and write B for branch here. And let's connect it here. So now you're asking with this branch, is the health 0 or not? If the health is not 0, we don't really want to do anything. However, if the health is 0, we're going to drag from this pin and write destroy actor, and this will destroy the character. So you're going to get damaged and it's going to check if the health is 0 or not. So let me just minimize this, and in the pane causing volume, let me change the damage to something larger so we can actually see this effect a bit quicker. So maybe 15 actually in the damage per second. Let's click on play and let's now walk into here. Now you can see it's going to play an effect every time I'm getting damaged in this volume. If I get out of this volume, I'm not going to get damaged anymore. And if I get inside of here now, I'm going to lose the rest of my health. And at the end, I'm going to get destroyed.